have George Stern. George Stern from Atlanta, Georgia.
Thank you.
Correct?
Yes, sir.
George, when were you first admitted to the academy?
I was admitted to the academy in 1982. I want to say January 1982.
Okay, so it was like 24 years.
4 years ago.
Uh-huh. And at that point, well, was there anyone else in Georgia then, or were you one of the first?
We had maybe I was the third fellow. We had Jack Turner, who was sort of the dean of, he just retired, by the way, at age 80-something, and we just honored him. Our academy did.
I remember meeting him. I like
Jack
that.
Turner was probably he was really the founder of family law, the elder statesman of family law in our state, as far as primarily being a family lawyer. And we had maybe one or two others, and I was either the third or fourth fellow. We did not even have a provisional chapter then. And eventually we got in 10 after I got in 82. Unfortunately, most of my fellows never attended the academy meetings, as they don't
Nationally.
today, nationally.
Yeah.
And so in 82, I said to my sweet wife, Eva, let's go to this meeting in Chicago.
And that was the first year you were
the
admitted?
first year I went to a meeting in Chicago, and I don't think, other than when she unfortunately was ill, that I have ever missed one since.
Right, right. And I remember the November meeting we had, how many years ago was it, when Eva passed away?
November 2000.
She's one of the greatest people I've ever met.
Thank you. She died on the Friday of the academy meeting.
Yeah. I remember the announcement.
I felt real good about it. I bet 10, 15, 20 people got on the plane that weekend.
Yeah, everybody cared. Everybody cared, and everybody cared, of course, about you, but about Eva because she was so
really
special.
cared about you.
Yeah, they really did. She was, and it was a beautiful marriage. It just was something.
I can't tell you how many people in this academy have come to me and say that one of the first people that ever befriended me was Eva, who was always so nice about,
Always
you got to
nice.
meet the people.
Yeah.
And
She was a great lady. I remember an executive committee meeting in Georgia after my famous, what was that there? We were staying at
Ritz-Carlton.
Ritz-Carlton
Oh, the famous
on
Ritz-
Buckwheat.
Buckwheat.
Okay, and we had, and it was a night that Tyson was knocked out. Remember, wasn't that night?
Buster Brown, was it?
Yes, something like
something
Buster
Brown.
something,
Buster
Buster Mathis or something.
And we had a
So-
dinner in our house.
Well, that's what I'm about to get to when one of our fellows accidentally caused the breaking of something that went back four centuries, or a Ming dynasty.
that
And
did upset
it
her.
was, but it should have, but she just couldn't have been more gracious about it. I would have died.
She was nice
It was
about it.
unbelievable. In any event, George, what motivated you to get involved in the academy at the beginning when Turner said, "Hey, we've got a group here"? What was your thought process then?
At that time, in my opinion, we had a very small and unimportant family bar in Georgia. And as I said, Jack came to me and said, "Hey, listen, you're doing only family law." And I at that time had started specializing only in family law. And he said that, you need to be part of this organization, the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers, and I'm going to sponsor you. Back then we didn't have a chapter, so you had to get somebody to sponsor you. And I had been very active in the Commercial Law League of America, and now I became a family lawyer, so there wasn't much need in me doing that. And that's when I said, it'd really be fun on a national level to see what I can learn about family law and meet other family law practitioners. It's interesting, the first meeting I went, I knew no one, and I sort of went to the first people that I heard that had a southern accent. And the first people that I really met in the academy the first day were Harvey Golden,
South Carolina.
South Carolina. He was with Jan Warner, also
Right.
South Carolina, and Marcia and Mel.
Oh,
Which was
okay.
interesting. And it was funny
From
how
Florida by way of
That's
Long
right.
Island.
I followed away from Long Island, but I knew they were Florida. And,
Right.
And then, of course, I really believe that the person that really influenced me more in the academy at that time, who was one of the first people I met, was Lenny Lowe.
Oh,
And, what a great
Wonderful
man.
man.
And Lenny just took me right in. And
he was just the most inclusionary embracing type guy. You know, I think about him so much, but I mean, Lenny was the guy who said, we don't shake hands, we hug, right?
He was the best. And from the early on that I met him, and I met him already at that 82 meeting, he couldn't have been any nicer, and he liked.
He was the best.
He was the best.
You know, and we were half joking yesterday about, we've got a lot of living presidents to interview during this project, and the shame is that we're going to have more difficulty in interviewing the ones that aren't living, but we're going to have Eddie Schaefer, who I don't know how much you remember about Eddie, but Eddie is going to interview the non-living at this point. And the more we can talk about some of the former presidents that aren't around to speak for themselves, like, for example, you're speaking about Leonard Loeb, and others have too. He was just universally loved. I've never heard a bad word about Leonard Loeb from anybody.
He was the best.
Yeah.
And of course, when I got in, either Schaefer had been the president the year before, and Owen Doss was president.
Right.
And that's sort of when I met a bunch of you all at that meeting. I don't know, it was 82 or maybe.
It was at the Greenleaf.
Greenleaf. But what I meant is, and then we started talking about, what are we going to do for this organization? Because it seemed like it was sort of one or two people wanted to run the show. Everybody in New York wanted to run it. Illinois wanted to run it. And that's sort of when I really got interested in it, because I agreed with so many people that I just met.
Right. During the course, what year were you president of the
I was
Academy?
president from November of '98, when I was sworn in, till November of '99.
And who preceded you as president?
Mike McCurley
And who was after you?
and Miriam Mason was after me.
Marie Mass was after you.
And Mike Ostro, who you just interviewed,
Right.
was the year before that.
Okay, right. And you had, of course, other positions within the Academy before being president. You were treasurer you were the Idi Amin of the Treasury there forever.
Forever. Well, there's a long story behind that.
Go
Jimmy
ahead.
Friedman, who I met early on, another one of our esteemed
Yeah.
past presidents. I was at a meeting or something, and I went to Jimmy Friedman, and I said, I don't understand this organization. We don't have a budget. How do you have a financial report, and we don't even have a budget? I said, we need to have a budget and finance committee. And interestingly enough, I think he appointed me as either the first chair of that committee. So, well, you're going to do that, and you have to be the chair. I really think Marcia may have started that, and then I ran with the ball afterwards, and then he invited me to my first executive committee meeting. I wasn't on the executive committee at the time, to present what I considered really the first budget that we ever had in the Academy. We really got up and said, here's the income we take in, and here's what we spent, and let's try to figure out how to get a balanced budget. And then the next year, I think Lenny became president shortly thereafter, and he asked me to be the treasurer. And that's sort of how I got on I went on the board next.
Right. As the representative from Georgia.
Well, no. I was still on the board when you had to run. That was before
okay.
we changed all that.
All right.
And I had an interesting experience there, because there were 3 seats that were up for grabs, and there were 5 of us running. And I was fortunate enough, because at that time the Illinois people weren't voting for the New York people, and the New York people weren't voting for the Illinois people. And I sort of got lucked in, because they both voted for me, so they wouldn't have to vote for each other. I'll never forget Bernie Ranella, who is my good and close friend, lost that election. He did not win.
I remember that.
Because he couldn't get enough votes, and I sort of snuck in.
Right.
Me and Harold Fields, he was one of the other 3 in that election. So I actually got elected the first time.
How many years were you treasurer, would you guess?
Oh,
Those are 1-year terms,
Yeah,
basically,
but,
as opposed to vice
generally,
president.
I got reelected, I don't know, 4 or 5 years.
And
Till I
after
became a
that,
vice president.
you became vice president for some period of time. During the course of your presidency, were there any specific projects that you could recall that were important and being worked on at that point, whether originated by you or someone else?
Well, we had a lot of projects we were working on. We certainly were working on some of the guidelines for the children. Of course, I had started already. I think the 2 or 3 things that I had started at that time was that I'd started my focus on forever theory, thought, right before I got to be president. And Sandra Morris, I asked her to chair that, and I really was lucky that so many people were interested in that, even though it was difficult for me, because a lot of people couldn't see that divorce lawyers ought to be the ones that advocate to show people what the shortcomings are of marriage and teach them ahead of time. And here we are divorcing people. And that's, of course, the biggest project, and I think it will probably be a great project when our new CD is shown on PBS, which is going to be soon.
Yeah,
Took
how
8
soon
years.
is that going to be? Because it's been a long time in coming.
It took us 8 years to do it. It took a lot of infighting in the academy. A lot of people, some of our presidents were totally opposed to this after I no longer was president. It wasn't one of these things like if one of our presidents started a project, but it took 3 or 4 years, the presidents were supporting it. Miriam Mason, who succeeded me, always supported it, and then we had 2 or 3 down years there.
But you basically, it was your idea, and you started with it before you were president.
I started with it a year before I was president. The one thing I tried to accomplish, and I think it's a little more successful maybe today than it was when I did it, I met with Miriam Mason and Charles Shaneberg when I was president-elect, and they were going to be the next 2 coming down the line. I said, the biggest problem we have in this academy is we have no consistency here. Yeah. That every time somebody's president, the next person wants to do something and throw out everything else.
Right, so you need some continuity.
I wanted some continuity. And Miriam agreed 100%. Unfortunately, I don't think the 3rd year it was necessary the same way, and there was again 2 or 3 years where that didn't happen. I think they're trying to do that again. And that was a big thing with me, that you couldn't, why reinvent the wheel each time? And we did that for a long time in the academy. Every time somebody new came in, we reinvented the wheel again. Of course, the other thing we did, you may remember, we had we tried to do our own CLE program, and we did 2 of them in the Southeast in Atlanta.
Yes.
We didn't really succeed in that, but I think we had a good product.
That's right, I remember that. That's
for
right.
2 years, Arthur, I think you came down,
yes.
and Arthur Berman was very instrumental in that, and that was very good. And I'm the first one that ever brought Roger Dodd to an academy meeting, because he was my feature speaker when I was president, and we had our meeting in Tucson.
Correct, yes.
Right. Remember when you
That's
were home,
right.
and we went, you even I went hiking.
That's right, with Eva.
With Eva, exactly.
She was popping the chemo pills while we were doing
Exactly.
that.
And so Roger obviously must have been an instant hit, because it seems
Oh,
like he's
well,
talking.
he's a fellow in the academy, but
Fellow.
he's a guy who, it's amazing how people look forward to hearing him every time, and they've heard it before, which is really a testament to how good he is.
I actually brought him Roger into the academy. He and I did a NETA course in the University of Georgia, and I said to him, well, what do you do? What kind of lawyer are you? He said, well, I do a lot of divorce work. And I said, well, you need to be in the American Academy. And of course he joined, but never was active. He never came to meeting. And then maybe a year before I got to be president, I went to him and I said, you need to do me a big favor. I said, you're the best speaker. People love you. They can learn a lot from you. You need to come to my meeting in Tucson. He was reluctant to do that, and then he came. And of course, since then he's been an instant hit. Now he comes to the meetings for 3 or 4 days. I only had him for 1 day. He came early in the morning, he talked, and he left. So that was a nice thing to do.
During the course of your years as a fellow, 24 years, I'm sure there have been some memorable moments, some both positive and negative, having to do with the academy. Give us some of your recollections of some of the major things that you recall that have occurred during the time you've been a fellow.
Well, I got to say this. I think the most important thing of being a member of this academy is the fellowship that you make, people you meet. And I really believe that if I can look almost at every meeting, whether it be in Chicago or at our resort type of or winter type of places that are in the sun, that every meeting has been fantastic. But I think the camaraderie, the parties we've had, most of the CLEs have been good, some better than others. One thing I've never been able to accomplish in this academy is that I don't think we do enough of CLEs for those lawyers that have been a member of this academy, say, more than 10 years, who are hearing basically the same thing that they've known and could probably teach as well themselves. But as a general rule, all the camaraderie, the parties, of course, I remember when we did the Bounds of Adequacy. I think that was a very historical, important piece of work that we did. Obviously, there have been times when you and I haven't been as happy with things that have happened at the Academy without getting into the specifics of those. I'm not always happy about the politics of the Academy. I think sometimes that we get a little carried away with that. I think we do a good job and doing a better job today of getting everyone involved, that is socially, and hopefully also on committees and all that.
Well, that was a major part of the Academy, I think, for all of us. The inclusionary nature of some of the previous and early presidents, both, you know, when you started out and when I started. The fact that people genuinely wanted to get to know you and to bring you in and to have you go to work, and that working hard was a very big help in moving up in the Academy chain, as opposed to just knowing somebody and being a political appointee, as opposed to some other organizations that working hard, first of all, they wouldn't even let you work hard. They wouldn't even let you be on a committee.
Exactly.
But is there anything else about the Academy as you look back on it? And a dominant theme of everybody that we've interviewed, former presidents, is the fellowship. That's what it's all about.
Well, you know, look, I think I feel real good that I know that anybody calls me on the phone, and I get calls, numerous calls from lawyers in Georgia who call me on the phone and say, hey, I need your help. I need a lawyer in a certain community. And I always feel real proud to say, well, you know what, I know the best lawyers in America, and I know them all personally, and I will go through our Academy directory, and I'll say whatever town it is, Houston or LA or Connecticut, and I'll say, here are 4 or 5 lawyers I know. They're all good. You need to see who your comfort level is.
Right.
And I feel good about that people feel the same way about me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know that I get a lot of business from Academy recommendations. You know, people move to Atlanta, their parents still live in other communities, and they call their lawyers and they say, hey, you got to call George Stern and all that. I think the camaraderie is number one. I think we do a lot of good legal work, a lot of scholarly work. I think our journal has improved when it comes out. I think the major pieces of work that we've done, whether it be concerns for children or this focus on forever that we're doing, have been major pieces of legal work, and I think all that's important. But I think that now, what I really love to see is that we can come to a place like Cabo. A, so many people want to come, and B, they want to be involved, whether it's involved in being on committees or whether it's involved just getting together. I mean, like yesterday, all those people on the boat, it was just amazing. It wasn't like it was $5 to go there. They had to significantly want to go there. And I think that's what has really made the Academy, and that we're not cliquish anymore, and it's not, well, here are a few people and they're running the show. I think we're open to everybody. If, as you said, they want to work hard.
They want to work hard. What kind of a kick was it for you where your daughter's in the Academy?
That's the best.
Well, I remember when she was starting out in law school in Connecticut, of all places.
Starting in Connecticut. She came to meetings with me, you know,
I know.
Before she was even in law school.
Right. Must be a gigantic kick.
It's incredible. I always tell this story about Carla. When Carla got in the Academy now, maybe before 2000, maybe 6-7 years ago, and she was studying for the exam. That's when we'd started the national exam. And I said, my God, you're studying for that exam as hard as you did for the bar exam. She said, Dad, I would really feel stupid that a past president of the Academy, his daughter would fail the exam. And of course, her working with me just makes my life so much easier.
Sure,
so
I guess.
and she loves coming to these meetings, and of course, it's great to have my grandchildren at the meetings,
right.
And so it's fabulous.
Right.
Fabulous having her.
Is she active? Is she involved?
She's active.
Within the Academy committee-wise?
She's I don't know whether she still is. She certainly has been on the board of governors of the local chapter, and she's active there in the Inns of Court and other organizations. So she's very active in the bar and does a good job as a lawyer. She's been with me, believe it or not, Arthur, 16 years now. She's been a lawyer. So time flies. She got out in December of 1990.
Wow. Because I remember that we got her in touch with a real estate agent, or you, to get her a place to live when she was going to University of Bridgeport Law School.
Exactly.
Unbelievable.
That was 87. That's almost 20 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. George, as far as the academy today, what you're seeing, you're looking back, you've been a fellow for 24 years, you've had so many positions in the academy, you've seen it all here. Tell us what your impression is of the academy here in the year 2006.
Well, I'm very impressed that so many people attend the meetings. And I'm very impressed that so many people who I would say I haven't necessarily met or I've met for the first time this year. And I think the academy has positioned itself to have some excellent leadership. One thing I think that we do probably as good as any organization is that we look out 4, 5, 6 years ahead, so that someone who wants to be active and really desires to be president can start as treasurer or secretary, and I'm assuming before they become an officer on the board and all that. And so we can sort of see what the leadership is, and I think the academy has a very bright future. I'm happy to be part of this. I will continue to support the academy. I'm not going to sacrifice one organization for the other. I love this academy. It's been very good to me. It's a great organization. I made great friends like you, like Mike Ostro, who just, everyone was so good to me when Eva died. I really am thankful, and they've taken Margie, my new wife, as if, time just marches on. So I love the academy, and I think it's a great place.